Hello, I'm Jerry Malloy and welcome to my Play Right Away channel. In this next video I'm going to look at this steel string acoustic guitar. Now this is the second type of guitar. As I mentioned, the classical nylon string guitar is the first most common one to sort of begin on. Now these guitars are a little bit more expensive. To start with, the main difference is the size of the body. As you can see, it's a lot bigger. It's more of a folk guitar, or it just has a completely different sound, more for strumming and fingerstyle, although you can play lead on them. Or chords. Or just sort of a big strumming guitar. Here we've got a scratch plate, which really indicates that if you are playing and strumming, the pick might catch on the body, and instead of making scratches on the body, this is there to protect the body. Now the wood on these guitars is extremely important because different types of wood produce different sounds, are more sustained, etc. Now the wood is in such short supply these days that the manufacturers can't just go out to Brazil and chop a Brazilian, Indian rosewood or whatever, koa, any of these trees. You just cannot chop them down because they're so endangered. So what actually happens is that they have to wait for a storm for the trees to blow down, and then they can buy the trees and make guitars out of them, because the wood is in such short supply. Normally this would be like different types of top. A solid top is the thing to aim for, as opposed to a laminated top. Now the difference is that a laminated top is normally 2 or 3 pieces of wood stuck together, whereas a solid top is a thicker top and it's just one piece. I think this is a one-piece solid top. Now most of the tone comes from the top. The top vibrates, produce the sound. And on this guitar we can see at the top there's a little thing which covers the truss rod. And I spoke before on the classical guitars it has no truss rod. The truss rod cover is there, and if that's unscrewed you can see the bar, and the bar goes right the way through and finishes about here, and we use an Allen key to twist it, which would pull the neck back and straighten it. But as I said before, it's not something that you'd really want to be used to doing. You'd want to take it to a professional. The action on this guitar is quite reasonable. It's adjustable. Certainly if you get a guitar like this with a truss rod and the action is very high, I believe that's the way they send them out to the factory, with a high action, meaning that it is adjustable. So you might want it a little bit lower, in which case they would take the strings off, file this bridge bit down a little bit, maybe file the nut down a little bit, just the grooves in the nut, to make sure the strings are nearer the neck in that case, and adjust the truss rod, in which case it will just make it a little bit easier to play. Certainly when you get up to the neck here and you've got to bar, you want it to be nice and easy to play. But you need clearance of the strings, you need clearance on the neck of the strings, so if you hit it harder they're going to vibrate nicely and give you a nice tune. As I said, the strings are made of steel. Now the gauges of strings usually go from the first string upwards. Now they're measured in thousandths of an inch. They're not metric, they're imperial. So when I started to play, you very quickly find out, or I found out, that the first string on an electric guitar normally is a 009. Now the thinnest string you can get is a 007. And when you take it out of the packet it feels like a bit of cotton. You can't really hold it, it's just so thin. So that'll be no good to put on your guitar. The gauges go up on the electric guitar. The first one would be 009, then 011, then 017, 26, 36, 46. So that would be a light set of strings. On this acoustic guitar, this is probably an 11 or a 12. So an 11 or 12, 15, something like 20. then going higher and higher and higher. The thickest string you can get, I think, is a 56, which is really, really thick. The heavier the string, the more tone that you get. So obviously you should play with the thickest strings that you can handle, particularly on an acoustic guitar, because the strings produce all the sound for you. On the electric guitar, you've got the pickups, you've also got the tone control on it, you've got your amplifier, effects, all which will help to shape the sound. But on the acoustic guitar, all you have is the strings. On this particular one, I've got a pickup built in, and I would put the jack socket in the end there, and I could then put that into an amplifier and it would amplify it for me. Now the bridge here, this is where the strings go, and these are bridge pins. And if you take them out, they're normally about this big. They're grooved and they taper at the bottom, so when you get a new string, you will push the string down into the hole there and push the bridge pin down on top of it to lock it into place, and then tighten the strings up. So this is the second type of guitar that you might be learning on. It is quite hard because the strings are pretty thick. The neck also is fairly thick because it needs to be fairly solid. And you need to bear in mind that your fingers will get quite tough at the end. It'll be quite sore to start with because you're playing on these heavy strings. So the fingers will toughen up, and if you practice, it's a good thing to practice little and often to begin with. That way your fingers will get tough. The skin tends to flake off to start with, but then it grows back thicker, so you'll still get the lines on the end of your fingers, but it won't hurt, so the lines still appear, but they're not sore. So this could be used for any sort of thing, really. Very much like the electric because the same type of strings. The other thing that you can do with this guitar and the electric guitar is alter the tuning. Now, folk players often use different tunings. The first tuning that I think is the most common would be when you tune down every string down one step, which is one semitone. So the tune would be E flat, 6th string, A flat, D flat, G flat, B flat and E flat. Now a lot of people used to do that, people still do. Jimi Hendrix, the later stuff that he did, particularly Little Wing and things like that, everything was tuned down a fret, so if you put the track on and tried to play with it in normal tuning, it would sound very strange. It wouldn't sound right, and in actual fact he just tuned it down and played normally, so the chord shapes you were playing was normal. But if you didn't know, it would be very confusing to try and get the same sound. U2 also, the early stuff, they tuned everything down. Guns N' Roses tune everything down, all their stuff was tuned down a fret. Again, if you were to play their stuff in normal tuning, it is very confusing. You need to know that they're tuning in different to the flat tuning. The next most common tuning is the 6th string, which would be tuned to a low D. A lot of folk people do that, and we just tune the 6th string down 2 frets, and that enables us to play a big D chord with all the strings ringing. In rock music, the Foo Fighters do a lot with just a low D tuning there. Folk music, again, on this type of guitar, folk musicians would tune down to a low D for some things. They might tune down to Dadgad, which Led Zeppelin did with Jimmy Page, which was D, A, D, G, A and D. Dadgad. There are plenty of open tunings as well for Bottleneck. You probably tune to an open G. So this is quite a flexible guitar to learn on. It does demand that your fingers do get tough to play it, but it helps. So good luck if you're starting off on this type of guitar. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon.